everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. So today is my video all about some breastfeeding tips and advice. So I really hope that you find this useful whether you are a new mum, a first time mum, or a mum to be and you just want to know some good tips for breastfeeding. I have posted 2 other videos about breastfeeding on my channel, which are my breastfeeding journey and also my breastfeeding tips, but that was around getting the baby back to breastfeeding after bottle feeding, because that pertained to me. That was kind of my story, at least for a certain part. So if you're more interested in that sort of thing, then I really hope that you find those videos useful, and I will leave them linked below. But this video is more of a general overview about breastfeeding. So yes, let's get on with the tips, and I really hope you enjoy them. The first thing that I want to say about breastfeeding is just know that it can be tricky, because yes, it is very natural. That's what our bodies are designed to do. Biologically, that's what our breasts are for, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is just going to be easy. But on the flip side, I also want to say that for some people, it can be easy. And I think it's really, really difficult. You never know which kind of side of the story to believe, because some people say breastfeeding is really easy. You just put them on the boob and that's it, you're away. You never have any struggles. And then there's some people who have obviously had a lot of struggles. I know I did. So when you're pregnant or you're expecting, or you have the baby, you're kind of not sure what to expect. But of course, both sides can be true. It can be very, very easy for some people and it can be difficult for other people. However, I was once told, and I have looked it up and it is true, I think it's around 2 to 5% of women physically can't breastfeed. There is some issue why they are not able to breastfeed, but everyone else can. So yes, it might take a bit of work, there might be a bit of effort, you might need to be a bit stubborn, you might need to have a bit of persistence and persevere with it, but you will get there hopefully. And once you are there, once you have got breastfeeding off and you're kind of away with it, then I think it is really easy. Like now, once we've got past the expressing and I was trying to get Arthur, my son, back to breastfeeding after bottle feeding, as soon as he started breastfeeding, my life completely changed. And yeah, I just find breastfeeding so easy, and it is a lovely, wonderful, natural thing. It's a lovely way to bond with your baby. So if you are thinking about breastfeeding, please don't let the stories about people's journeys that maybe didn't go well, or people that did struggle, put you off. Because if it's something you want to do, your baby may latch on straight away beautifully and you may never have any problems anyway. But just at the same time, you should also be aware that there could be issues. However, they can definitely be overcome. So a really big part of breastfeeding is getting the baby's latch right, and that means getting the baby in the right position and their mouth the right way onto your nipple. It's not just a case of putting them there and basically, if kind of this is the baby's mouth and this is your nipple, you kind of don't want them to go on it centrally. They kind of need to like come from it from beneath and like latch on, kind of hook on like that. So you may hear of the saying nose to nipple, so that's completely true. So their mouth hasn't got to be at your nipple, they've actually got to be a bit lower than that so that they can kind of tip their head back. And I remember at my antenatal class, she got some people to swallow these tubes of yogurt, and she was trying to set an example by saying, when we're swallowing, we tip our head back, so your baby needs to do the same too. Now, there are loads and loads of YouTube videos and loads of articles and websites all about the baby's latch and position, so I'm not going to go full on in depth, and obviously I can't really show you either, so you'd probably be better off watching that specifically. But yes, remember, nose to nipple, you want baby to be in a straight line, so that's their ear, their shoulder and their hip. So for example, if you are in the position, kind of what maybe the first position that comes to mind when you think about breastfeed, where like a baby is kind of in your arm sort of thing, you want their body to be in a straight line, so their tummy has got to be against your tummy. And they do say if you can see the poppers on their sleep suit, then they aren't close enough. So you need to make sure they're right close and tight into your body and that everything is in a straight line. And quite often you see babies that are kind of too far up. As I said, they have to have their heads tipped back, so you may just want to make sure that kind of you've pulled their feet down a bit so they're actually slightly away from your boob, so they kind of have to stretch up for it. Also, I see when babies are in this position, their arm that's on the bottom tends to be in the way, like that. So you kind of want to make sure that that arm is away, and so they're just kind of like facing you full on with the front of their body. You can also do a couple of things to help them. So you can shape your breast or your nipples. So you kind of want to go like this, and they call it like a sandwich hold. So you kind of are squishing your boob a little bit to help them latch on, because they don't just want to be just on the nipple, they want to get like a good mouthful of your breast. It's kind of like You don't want their mouth to be like they're having a straw. It needs to be like they're taking a bite of an apple. They want a nice wide mouth on you. To get a baby to open their mouth, you could also tickle their top lip with your nipple and also just express or just squeeze your breast a tiny bit, just get a little drop of milk out, and that will kind of help them. They'll be able to smell it essentially, and they'll know that it's there. The other technique that I find really helpful is the flipple one, or some people call it the exaggerated latch. So I will try and find a good YouTube video that goes through that, but that's really good. It effectively is kind of like you are pointing your nipple away from the direction of the baby, kind of with your thumb, and as they are about to latch onto you, you kind of flick your nipple back into their mouth. It's really hard to explain, but I will try and leave a good video. Also, to help baby feed, you will need to get their hands out of their scratch mitts so that they can feel your breast, and that also helps with your milk supply. But yes, the latch can be really difficult. As I said, some babies and some mums, maybe it just happens naturally for them, but I think for a lot of people it does need work. So it might be a case of they've gone on, the latch isn't right, you take them back off again, and so on and so forth. It might take quite a bit of work. It can take weeks for you to absolutely perfect it, but it is really important that you get the latch right, because if the latch isn't right, it could cause you pain, and it also could mean that the baby can't feed efficiently and effectively. Another good thing to do with the latch is also try out different breastfeeding positions. There are so many. So you've got the cradle one where I was talking about, where kind of the baby is kind of in your arms, the cross cradle where you're kind of holding their head. So another good tip is to keep your hand away from their head, so you don't want to hold the back of their head. You can hold their neck, but you want to keep anything away from the back of their head. But yeah, so the cradle, the cross cradle, you can do breastfeeding lying down, which honestly is such a lifesaver. That is how I feed my baby at night. And you, again, you're tummy to tummy, and they're feeding on your breast that is like lowest to the bed, if that makes sense. So that's a really good one. You can sit them on their laps. And a really nice one, they say, is to recline and kind of have the baby on your front, so you're kind of half led down. So there are so many positions, and I would definitely say just try out a few and see what works. I was told rather unhelpfully in hospital not to bother with the side lying position, because I can't exactly do that position walking around a supermarket, which, yes, that's true. But it's not about that. It's more about getting the baby and you used to breastfeeding, and whatever position that may be to begin with, that's the position you do, and then obviously you learn and you grow in confidence, and then you can do other positions as well. As I briefly mentioned a minute ago, if the latch isn't correct, then this can be really painful for you. But you do have to be aware if it's painful. So there could be something else going on, like a tongue tie. So my baby had a tongue tie, and feeding was really hard and stressful, but it was also very painful as well. So if there is pain, then something isn't right. So it could just be positioning and the latch needs to be worked on, or there could be something else going on. But if you are having painful feeds, then don't accept it. There are some people that say, you know, breastfeeding shouldn't be painful at all. Never, it should ever be painful. And some people say, well, it's bound to be a bit because, you know, the baby's on the breast. But then if the latch is right, there shouldn't be any kind of friction or anything. So yeah, kind of really there shouldn't be any pain. But obviously, as I said, it can take a while to get the latch right. It does take a lot of practice. So you may have a little bit, it may just be a bit uncomfortable, but you definitely kind of shouldn't be in excruciating pain. And if you are concerned, then always speak to somebody. So that brings me on to my next tip, which is to get support. There is so much support out there, and it's really good just to seek it out. So there are lots of breastfeeding groups you can actually go along and see people. You can meet other mums, but there's often kind of other professionals that may go, but it's usually led by a peer supporter, so obviously they have had training. Of course, in this current climate, breastfeeding groups aren't running at the moment, but if you're watching this in the future, then do find your local one. But there are also loads of really good Facebook groups. They are doing Zoom calls. You could also pay for a lactation consultant to come to you, which is what I did, which was really helpful. Obviously midwives and health visitors, but I think a lot of people say they haven't had kind of masses of training, so you kind of need to get somebody who has a bit more expertise than them. My health visitor did refer me to their feeding specialist, so I'm not sure kind of what her exact job title is, but she is kind of like a lactation consultant, but she was through, you know, the National Health Service. She was free to me sort of thing. So it's really good. If you're struggling at all in any way, just seek support. I think it's such a shame, because I think a lot of people may give up breastfeeding or stop, their journey stops sooner than they ideally would have wanted to because something went wrong and there's some issue. And rather than them seeking out support, whether they don't know kind of who to go to or what to say or whatever, and then they end up stopping breastfeeding, which I think is such a shame. If it's something that you really want to do, but you're struggling, then just make sure you get support from somewhere. There is such a lot out there, and if it means that your breastfeeding journey can continue, then that is brilliant. I think the breastfeeding rates in this country are so low, and I just think probably a lot of that is because the right support hasn't been sought at the right time. So I will leave below a list of useful links and websites and helplines and everything to hopefully help you get help if you need it. Make sure that you buy and wear really nice, comfortable nursing bras. And I got my first pair from Marks and Spencer's, and then I just got some really similar ones from Amazon, which were obviously much cheaper, and they're just kind of the really soft ones. They're obviously not wired. They're not even a size as such, like a cup size. They're just small, medium and large, and I just find that the best thing to me, so I bought a medium. And yeah, I will leave them linked below if you would like to see the bras that I've bought, but you will just want to kind of take care of your breasts. They may be a bit achy because they can get very full in the beginning because, your breasts are trying to regulate, your milk supply is kind of changing and chopping a little bit in the beginning especially, so you kind of want to be nice and gentle. As I said, if the latch isn't right, your nipples may be a little bit uncomfortable, a bit sore, so get some nipple balm or nipple cream too. Lancino is often the one that's talked about, that's what I use, and it's completely fine for the baby to feed after, so if you put it on and then the baby needs another feed, you don't need to worry about wiping it off or anything, so I will also leave that link below too. I would definitely recommend looking for YouTube videos that are specifically for watching a baby breastfeed and seeing the difference between a baby feeding at the breast and kind of feeding well, or a baby that's just suckling at the breast. So that is what really helped me. So in the beginning, my baby couldn't really feed effectively, and I could tell the difference, and then I watched these videos and it just made it really clear. So basically, when your baby is feeding, so they should be kind of sucking and swallowing, you will see this muscle working here, and you'll also see their throat drop kind of with every swallow that they're doing. You will also probably, more times than not, hear them. It kind of sounds like a train. Kind of they're like breathing, sucking and swallowing, breathing, sucking and swallowing. Kind of very rhythmic. Also, it's good to know the baby's feeding pattern. They will suck very fast because they are trying to get that milk to come, and then you'll have your letdown, which means your milk starts flowing. Then you will hear that lovely kind of slow, rhythmic swallowing sound, and at the end of a breastfeed they will do what they call flutter sucks, which are very kind of light sucks just to finish off, because basically as your milk starts flowing it's kind of a bit thinner and a bit watery, and then as the feed progresses your milk progresses and it gets fattier and fattier, and the fattiest bit of milk content is right at the end of the feed, which is when they're doing their flutter sucks. For that reason, it is really important to try and swap your breasts, and once baby is finished on one side, it's always good to let them come to the other side, so just offer your other side and see if they have finished or if they do want more. Some people say they kind of put a little clip on their strap or a hairband around their wrist or something so they know which side they fed on and which side to go to next, because you want to try and do it fairly equally if you can. However, for example, if your baby has had a full long feed on one side and then they've had just a little bit on your right side, for example, the next feed you may want to start back on that right side, if that makes sense, because they've just had a long one on your left and then a little one on the right. But you will work it out, and as you get used to it and you'll get more confident and you'll just kind of get to know your body, you'll get to know your breasts and your baby, and you'll just kind of do it naturally. A really good indicator if baby is feeding, other than the throat drop, is also their nappy output. I will leave a link below to a really good article that explains how many kind of wet and dirty nappies are normal and a good sign, and obviously weight gain is a really good sign too. Also be aware that babies feed a lot, and newborn, they're probably going to be feeding like at least 8 to 12 times over 24 hours. They also cluster feed, which is when they seem to be kind of on off the breast for a few hours, so sometimes that could be like every evening they just have a period where they are cluster feeding. But that is good, they are trying to build up your milk supply, but a lot of people worry that that could be a sign that the baby isn't having enough milk, that they're too hungry, or that your milk supply isn't enough, and it's probably more often the case that your milk supply is enough. Of course, sometimes it can mean maybe there is an issue, maybe baby isn't feeding effectively, but you just need to look at the other signs. So as I said before, you can look at their nappy output, look how baby is, you know, do they seem satisfied after a feed, or, you know, are they kind of constantly crying? And I would just, it can be quite confusing, I think, especially if you are a first-time mum, it's your first time doing it. But as I said before, even if you just go into a Facebook group, there's some really, really good ones. There's one called Breastfeeding Yummy Mummies, and they're so, so good. And there's kind of a few kind of like experts, like trained people on there. Just ask a few questions and see what people say. Sometimes when people think their milk isn't enough, they start supplementing breastfeeding with some milk, and sometimes they give formula milk. Now, that is kind of a bit of a slippery slope, because if it is just custard feeding, your baby's trying to build up your milk supply. So then if you start giving formula, your breasts obviously aren't making that milk that you're giving in the bottle. So you kind of want to avoid doing that, if that makes sense. Obviously, if you want to combi feed, that's another thing which I'll come on to later. But yeah, if you're worried about your milk supply at all, then before you do anything, just read this article, and I'll put a link below, which is really, really helpful. And also get some support, ask some questions, and just kind of get yourself familiar with custard feeding and assess whether you think it is that, or if there is potentially an issue. If there is an issue with them feeding, it doesn't mean that breastfeeding has to end and you have to use formula at all. If your milk supply is there, then you can maybe express and do that. But yeah, the first instance, just get support. You also want to get yourself familiar with the signs of hunger. So babies may kind of rub their eyes, they may yawn, they may root around, which means they're kind of like bobbing their head around your breast. Crying is actually a very late sign of hunger, so you want to get feeding your baby or offering your breast to them a lot quicker and sooner than that. Also, just let your baby come off the breast naturally. When they finish their feed, they will come off. So you don't need to worry about taking them off at all. It may mean that they are on there for a while, but that is a good thing, you know, they'll know when they are finished and when they're done. So I referenced bottle feeding earlier, so if you want to use bottles, or even if you want to use some dummies, it is advised that you wait at least 3 to 4 weeks after baby is born and breastfeed them for that long before you introduce any sort of teats to them. That is because they could get confused, so their suck technique is very different at the breast than it is on a bottle or a dummy. Also, if you want to use a bottle, it's advised to wait that long because your breasts are trying to regulate and trying to get your milk supply at the right level for your baby. So if you then start introducing a bottle, that's just kind of going to affect your milk supply. So do try and wait that long if you are thinking about using a bottle. If you have used a bottle and your baby seems a bit confused, or you know, you've been using bottles and you want to start breastfeeding again or breastfeeding more, then you may want to look at my other videos, because that is kind of what I cover in my breastfeeding journey and my tips for getting baby back to breastfeeding. So do have a look at those as well. Sorry if the lighting has changed, the sun has just come out a little bit. But yes, the other thing that I was going to say is that some people do say that dummies can mask the hunger cues. So obviously the dummy is for comfort, but breastfeeding is for comfort too. So if you give babies a dummy, just be aware of those sorts of things. When breastfeeding, I think it's such a great thing because you don't need to have any routine. You don't need to worry really about when baby last fed, when they're going to feed next. You'll just keep offering them. Babies come to the breast and they breastfeed for more than just hunger and thirst. They also come to you for comfort. So just be sure to keep offering the breaths. The only thing you need to be aware of, especially when they're newborn, is that really they want to be feeding every 3 hours. So as I said earlier, you're looking at probably at least like 10 to 12 feeds over 24 hours. That includes overnight and in the day. So if they are sleeping and they've been asleep for 3 hours, you do need to wake them up. Babies' tummies when they're newborn are absolutely tiny. Breast milk is really easily digestible, so it goes through your system, which is very nice on their tummies, but it does mean that their tummies will empty. So you need to make sure that you are waking them up if they are sleepy and offering them a breastfeed. A little tip that I want to say is just make sure that you are taking care of yourself and eating and drinking well. You'll probably find that you will be more thirsty and you'll also be more hungry, because obviously when your body is producing this milk, it is burning calories, so you kind of need to replace those calories. However, I will say, when my baby was small, I didn't really notice it. And I guess as your milk supply increases, your hunger may increase too. But I didn't really notice it. Obviously, you're very busy, you might be stressed, there might be other stuff going on, your emotions are everywhere, and sometimes your kind of hunger goes unnoticed and your needs can go unmet. But if you can, remember just to keep some water and some snacks handy and near to you at all time within reach. And I would say just a good little tip is to actually have a bottle of water near you. So sometimes I'd be feeding baby and then I wouldn't be able to reach my glass of water on a table. But if you've got a bottle of water, you can kind of just put it on this chair or the settee next to you, so it's much more easily accessible. And then on the same note, you may also want to find snacks that you can eat with one hand. So even things like yogurt, obviously you kind of need to hold the pot and the spoon. Even with crackers and hummus, I find that a bit difficult with one hand. So maybe you want to have some cheese or some fruit or some nuts, things that you can generally just eat with one hand. Chocolate bars, you don't have to be healthy, I definitely wasn't. But you'll definitely find that you'll be more hungry. Your body is producing a lot of more calories, and I think a lot of people do tend to lose weight, because I think I definitely did actually in the beginning. Like, I look at myself and I could tell that I was a little bit thinner in the early days. I think I probably was producing the milk but not eating enough, whereas now I definitely am. A general overview tip that I want to say is just make sure to keep your breasts a happy place. So that is what my health visitor told me, and you want to do lots of the skin to skin as much as you can, especially in the very, very early days. And when baby is born, you want to get that skin to skin straight away. Take baths with your baby and have lots of cuddles, because that is really good for stimulating the baby's feeding reflexes, but it's also really, really good for your own hormones and for your body to know to boost your milk supply. So those are all my breastfeeding tips and advice. I really hope that you found them useful. If you want to know anything else, then please do leave me a comment in the comment section below. Or if you've got any other really good tips for first-time mums or people breastfeeding for the first time, then do leave them below. There are lots more tips and things that I probably could say and think of, but hopefully this has just given you like a good brief overview. If you want me to do any more videos for anything specifically that I've said or things that I've said in my other breastfeeding videos, then be sure to let me know, because I'll be more than happy to do them. But for now, I think this does conclude my little breastfeeding series. I really hope that you enjoy them. Do check out my other videos if you're interested. If you do like mum life content, then I have been sharing my motherhood journey on YouTube. So my son is now 1 year old, so it's all on here. And also even my pregnancy and my trying to conceive journey is on here too. But yes, if you like mum life content, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, then I'd really like for you to put the thumbs up to it. It just helps push it out so that other people can get to see it and hopefully benefit from it too. So that would really help out this channel as well. But yes, for now, thank you so much for watching this one, and I really hope to see you in my next one. Bye everyone!